Hey folks, this is Totally and welcome to some more game dev. We're coming back with part 2 of the Stagger meter prototyping. In the first stream earlier today, we did some setup to get a progress bar showing underneath the enemy's kind of status area, and when we hit them, we can apply status to that enemy, and once that status meter is filled all the way, they become staggered. Stagger meter? I think I said status every single time. But anyways, we added a new status effect, which is stagger, and we now have the stagger meter. When it gets full, the enemy becomes stunned and will not act for, right now, 2 turns. We've kind of just randomly put in some values for the time being. We've also made it so Slash does 100 stagger damage, and the stagger meter fills to 100, so it instantly staggers them. We're going to want to tweak that and kind of play with some of those values. Otherwise, we were mostly just kind of debugging it a little bit last time. When we ended the stream, I was having a bug here where we weren't able to have this update instantly, and it wasn't interrupting the ability that they were currently trying to do. I did find a fix for that in between streams relatively easily. I was kind of stuck on it for a little while, but again, stopping and just taking a step back, it was pretty straightforward in the end. We didn't end up needing any of this stagger applied system that we were starting to play with, so we can remove all of that. Instead, I realized that we're already checking on the next attack on the start of a new turn, aka when the turn ends, and so I just moved this concept here of in internal update, which happens at the start of a turn, to not happen here, but instead happen at essentially turn end. So when the turn ends, if the enemy is stunned and they had an action, decide on a new attack, which, because they're stunned, will end up being the gray telegraph crystal and them basically not doing anything for a couple of turns. Basically they're choosing to do no ability for 2 turns, and then after that 2 turns is up, it will go back to trying to select a new action, and we can kind of see that continuously. So because again we have it so that Slash is basically 100% staggering, we can kind of just keep them stun locked. So let's play with some numbers. Now that we fixed a couple of those bugs, I think it's good to start playing with some values, because I think this is mostly doing exactly what I want in terms of at least prototyping the idea. So we're going to take a look at Slash, specifically, I believe this one. And, oh, it's not even in here, actually. It's not going to be in the prefab, but in the JSON file, which I think I actually have. I closed it like a fool. I've closed the sheet here. Can we open that? It's gonna open it in the correct file. Good. And we scroll down to Slash. If we change this to 100 and instead to 40, then we should be able to see that it takes 3 slashes to fill up the stagger meter. I do think we're gonna run into a problem where the enemy is going to die before we end up staggering them, I think. Oh no, okay. Why were we doing so much damage before? Ooh, interesting. The enemy still moved, even though it was, like, staggered. Interesting. There's some weirdness going on with staggering and moving. Okay, so that's a new bug. We'll have to figure that out. I kind of want to scrap the movement for now, though. Again, we had been working on this the last few weeks, trying to see if we could add movement to the enemy to kind of make combat a little bit more difficult, but I just don't feel like I have enough of a toolkit for the player to be playing with that mechanic, and that's why we're trying to add this stagger. If you didn't watch the first part, I feel like the movement stuff we've been working on is too complicated or too early to be introducing, and so we're trying to add a stagger system as just another way to kind of create diversity of what is the optimal ability to be doing at any given time. Even if that starts out as a simple, you know, use Slash to stagger them and then use Bash once they're staggered, I think that that's at least a direction that's better than what we currently have. So we're going to continue to prototype that. Now, how do I disable all the moving stuff that we've done? I think that's going to be pretty straightforward. We just go take a look at the slime, and then inside of its aggressive patterns, it's randomizing between bow attack pattern and dash attack pattern. I think instead we could just randomize between... What is dash attack doing? Just AI attack? So we could randomize between AI attack and bow attack. I think based off the current setup, the enemy will just stand there and attack us and never move now, which arguably is not what I'm looking for, but I just want to see if we can disable that movement for the sake of easier testing. Okay, so yeah, it's going to try and attack us, and then it's just going to keep doing that over and over again. Okay, cool. And it took us a couple of turns to defeat it. How many attacks are we currently taking? Or how many attacks is it taking to kill a slime currently before we start adding some of the damage multiplier stuff I want to do with Stagger? 3, 4, 5, 6 attacks on this slime. Okay. And then if we do come into here, we broke some stuff, it looks like. What did I do? Oh, hydration redeem. I will go grab the water bottle. I will be right back. Please don't go anywhere. All right. Now, what did we do? Actually, let me double check something here. Yeah, no, that's fine. Where did we make a bad modification? It doesn't seem to like the ability stuff. We did re-import. What is it complaining about? Giving key 0 is not present in the dictionary. So I think when we did this Stagger import, we brought in some of these extra abilities. Three, 1, 2, 3, 3. Which ability is it complaining about? Huh. Okay, this is the hit notification issue. That's a different bug that is older. This is the bug it's complaining about, and it doesn't like that I'm adding the same key multiple times. So I think the problem is that we have slash, bash, shoot, and defend. This needs to replace shoot. I haven't really talked about this today, but essentially I was playing around with some more movement tech last week. I'm not sure whether or not I'm going to keep it or not, but that's what this bug is related to that kind of quick prototype, where instead of making it so that you can move while you're attacking the enemy, instead the D-pad just changes your facing, and then I added move as an actual ability that the player can use with the B button press. I don't know if I like that, but it was just another thing I was experimenting with, trying to make it clear when the player can and can't do things. Okay, so that enemy is defeated. Can we open this now? No, still complaining that the dictionary already has 3 twice. This is 2. This is 3. Slash is 3, so there's 2 3s. Can I make this 0? Would that be okay? Basically, because of the ability overlap, some of the abilities have the same node index, and so it's trying to add the same ability to the same button on the grid. It's just a data problem. Yeah, that fixed it. Okay, so if we come into here and we buy some stat upgrades, this puts our attack up by strength by 3 currently. How many attacks can the enemy take after that? Oh, wow. Okay. Then it only needs 2. So strength increases are pretty massive. I think that's probably still fine, because it'll go from this enemy requiring you to play with the stagger mechanic to essentially being able to ignore it once you've upgraded your stats a little bit, which I think is going to feel good, but again, we won't know until we playtest and get other people's opinions. Okay, I think what I want to play with now is kind of tweaking some of the values a little bit. Because we have it so that the CT value, or the countdown time, for slash is currently 4, and I believe bash is 8. Yes, so it's twice as much time to perform the bash attack as it is to do the slash. And I do have the damage tuned up quite heavily for bash. I believe it is like 2.5 times as much, so that it is effective to do so, but it just feels bad to perform the bash attack. Like, what I've been discovering, and this is something maybe I should have talked about earlier today as well, but part of the thing that I'm running into is just the simple fact that it feels better to use the slash ability because it's faster. Because it only takes 4 turns instead of 8, even if the enemy has a really slow attack they're going to do, like they're going to choose to do a attack that has a CT of, say, 10, that means I could get a bash in without them even hitting me, which seems good, but it also means that I could just do 2 slashes in that amount of time. And it often just feels better, regardless of what the numbers actually are. I can make bash significantly more damage. It often just feels better to just do the quick attack and have more action happening. And like bash takes the same amount of time to execute, even though it has more CT, it will tick quickly, but the enemy takes actions in between. So sometimes you'll have the AI taking multiple actions, so even if it has the same amount of time, if nothing is happening, it still feels slower. And so I think I want to bring bash down in CT so it's closer to slash and it's not like double, but potentially give it a different value. So let's bring this down from 8 to something like 5. And I also want to disable the AoE concept for now, because we built the AoE for when the enemy was moving more. I think we should be able to just disable these effects. And now it should only target the tile directly in front of the player, and we shouldn't have to do any of these other associated values. Yeah, okay. So this should now be a single target attack like slash, but it has 1 more CT. So if we want to make it so they have different purposes, then I think we want to do something where slash maybe fills the stagger meter more quickly, but bash does more damage when the enemy is staggered. Why is... Oh, I'm still autopiloting to bash being on B, but I've moved it to Y in this weird configuration. Okay, let's try that again. So if I hit bash right off the bat, that's only doing 20 stagger right now. But with the bash being so much higher damage, it ends up outperforming, actually staggering the enemy. So we also need to reduce the amount of damage that bash is doing. Where is that happening? Is that in the JSON file as well, actually? I think it might be. Yeah, this has a POW of 30, so it's actually 3 times more effective. So how do I do this, actually? Because I want one ability to be stronger or preferred when the enemy is not staggered, and then another ability that is stronger when the enemy is staggered. I have a bad feeling that means I need... have a bad feeling that means I need to have 2 different power values. A power value for when the enemy is not staggered, and then a power value for when the enemy is staggered. That feels overly complicated, but I think to get the functionality I want, I think that's what I need. How am I going to check that? So bash has this damage effect. That's using the hit effect. Inside of here, we set the power. Oh, we did something similar to this for the combo system we were prototyping. Can we steal some of this? The power increases based off of the number of combo points you've done to the enemy. We can't differentiate. Oh, maybe we can actually. So let's make a new ability effect. We're going to put this in the stagger effects. We're going to copy the combo power adjuster and use that as a base. I put it in the wrong folder. So let's put that in Stagger. Visual Studio, stop popping up. All right, and then we are going to do Stagger Power Adjuster Ability Effect. Rename that. Let Visual Studio do its thinking thing. Minimize it so I can actually open the class I want. Cool. So then in here, I think we're not going to check a property in this situation. We're going to check the defender. How do we do that normally? We did this for literally the apply. Defender is get unit from target. So if we do defender, and then we want to check if it has a status effect on it. How can we do that? It's not going to like the fact that I didn't finish building that. I want to run the game and see where the status effect is getting created, because I believe it is a game object, and it is a game object that we add to the unit as a child. So we should be able to do a get component in children on the enemy to be able to determine whether or not it has the status effect. So we're going to hit the enemy 3 times in order to push it into stagger. And then if we do a search for the stagger status effect, which is here, and then look, it is underneath the enemy as a child object. So if we do a get component in children, and check that value. And we're looking for Stagger status effect. Again, we're prototyping. Ideally, we have some way of checking specifically the status component of the unit in order to be able to get this information without having to do a get component call. But honestly, we're doing it one time on a single frame when we're setting everything up. It's not the worst. I'm trying to get better about not optimizing unless we need to be optimizing, because sometimes I go down rabbit holes. All right, so if status effect is not null, I think I'm going to set the property value We don't care about any of the combo stuff. So if we find a status effect, then we want to modify the power value. And we're going to add, not based off this power increase, but we're going to get a different value. So this will be Stagger power increase ID. Is that how we refer to these? What do we call this? Yeah, we say value ID here. So we'll do a get property value of Stagger power increase ID. And then we're going to not have to times this. We're just going to use that value wholesale, I think. How was I doing it for combo again? I was doing the combo count value times the power increase, which was an integer. I think I like the idea of a flat power increase. I think that's going to be easier than doing any kind of multiplicative type property right now. So then if we go back to hit effect, which is the base of all of our abilities, and if we modify that, it should affect everything. Let's go to here. And then when we do combo check, we're going to add the new component we just created. Apply, nope, Stagger power, adjust. And then that is going to every time I type something, Unity is refreshing. Why is it doing that? I don't have any errors. Is it because of the autosave? It's literally taking time to re-import. Weird. I might need to close and reopen Unity. Okay, so then we're going to check the Stagger power. And then we don't need a power increase value anymore. That's not being used, right? It is not. So now, I did not remove both of these. I only removed the integer. Where did my string go? Cool. All right. So then Stagger power is the value we will be checking against. If it fails to find that value, it will just return 0, I believe. We checked this last stream. Yes. If it can't find that property, it'll just return 0. So if it doesn't find a stagger power value in the properties of this ability, it will not do anything. Otherwise, it will increase it by this amount if the enemy is staggered. So then if we go back to bash, we can come into here. Ideally, this will become a value that we get from design data, I think. But to test it real quick, I'm going to just add a power here. So we'll call this stagger power. And then we'll set that to, say, 20. So it's adding plus 20 power if the enemy is staggered. Maybe it does want to be multiplicative, actually, because I'm realizing this, if we had like an attack that had like 100 power, then adding plus 20 is only a 20% increase. But if you were using it on an earlier attack, that would end up being, if your early ability has a power of 20, then it's a doubling, 100% increase. I failed to hook up a reference. Let's go back to hit effect. Inside of here, I need to drag this into the property component. Cool. We're not debugging, right? No. So we're going to hit 3 times, put the enemy into a staggered state, and then bash, which doesn't work because the enemy is only staggered for 2 turns and our attacks are taking 4 to 5 turns. Okay. Easy fix. Let's make it so that when you stagger an enemy, it lasts 10 turns. Seems easy enough to fix for now. Again, we're testing and seeing what works and what doesn't. That's not going to be here. This is going to be on the auto status controller. So instead of having a default of 3 turns, let's make it 11, because it'll get -1 because the turn ends the moment the status is added, blah, blah, blah. This will end up being 10. And this will give us an opportunity to attack with at least 2 of our attacks while the enemy is staggered. And we don't need to worry about getting attacked back during this time. Yeah, so 10 turns. Now we should be able to do bash. And that did 15. And I think that's right because we just brought it down to 10 by default. So I think if we do bash without staggering, it'll only do 5. Yeah. So now bash is a stronger ability when the enemy is staggered. Otherwise, it is the same damage as slash, but does less stagger power and takes a little bit longer. Interesting. I am going to try making this multiplicative. So we're going to multiply whatever the property value is. These can only be integers. This property value system is only integers, which means it can only double or triple the damage. How could I convert that? I guess if I do the value divided by a number, I could get percentages. So if I wanted to do times 2, and I gave it an integer of 2, or times 20%, let's say, right? 0.12. Then if I gave it a 2 value, it would need to, for whatever reason, my brain is not working right now, so we're going to calculate it up. If I divide this by 10, I get that, and if I add 1 to it, I get 1.2, which is what I want. So then if I had like a value of, say, 11 divided by that would, and then add 1.1 plus that original 1, we get 2.1. That's a little confusing, but I guess technically that would allow it to work. Again, let's give it a try. We're going to do the integer value times 0.10 float, and then add 1 to whatever we get out of this, and then multiply that by whatever the current power value is. And then it doesn't like that this is now a float value, so we'll need to truncate it back to an integer. Could round. I don't feel like it. Okay. I lied, I feel like it. So then we'll do mathf dot round to int. There, easy. Takes 2 seconds. Now, I need to go into bash and change its value. So whatever the value is, that will be a increase in power by that percentage. Oh, this is going to be confusing actually. Because this, so 1 is actually a 10% increase. 2 is a 20% increase. So I guess if I wanted to make this a little clearer, I could do that, but it's still going to require some amount of knowledge on how this is actually working, that this property is a multiplicative value. So yeah, now if I do that, 20, in theory, doing this math, if I have a power of 10 by default, then if I do 20 divided by 100 plus 1, multiplying that by 10, I would get a power of 12. So 20% is probably... It's funny, I realize now this has the opposite problem. If this is percentage-based increases on the power, then when we have low power values, this will not be very effective. However, if we are having an ability that has a high power value, this will be very effective. So depending on whether or not we want to do addition based on the power or multiplicative on the power is kind of based a little bit on how high the initial base power is. Interesting. Hydration redeem. Thank you, unlockable characters. Okay. technically, each ability can have its own stagger power amount. So realistically, we could have it so each one is tuned to whatever we want. So it doesn't really matter. What felt good now was going from 10 power to 30 power. So realistically, timesing it by 3 was a good increase. But I don't think that's going to hold when the numbers get larger. If we were to look at our damage formula system, going from 10 power to 20 power is a big jump, but going from 100 power to 120 power, I don't know actually. I might need to play with some numbers. Okay, so if our attack has 10 power, the enemy will receive 5 damage. If our attack is 30 power, they should be receiving about 14 damage. Is that right? This is assuming that the enemy's defense is 5 and our attack is 7. What are the actual values right now? I think we've been playing with these a little bit as we've been starting to get multiple enemies. This one has a defense of 9. I think we can jump in game to see what our default attack is. Our default attack is 7. And we know the power is 10 to start. Okay. So going back to the sheet, the enemy's defense is 9. Okay, that lines up actually. So we should be doing 5 here. Yeah, we do 5. 16. Okay, so then let's assume we have 100 power. That means we'll do 52. And if we add 20 to that, we'll do 62. That doesn't feel like a big enough jump. I feel like I would want to do 200 power. Okay. I do think I want this to be multiplicative, the damage. It's just much larger in values than I thought. I think we do want to go from like 20 to 30. And then here from 52, we probably want to go to, yeah, basically if we multiply it by that amount, we're multiplying the end damage by that amount. I could look at the formulas and I would realize that's just a true statement, but in trying and playing with our formulas here, I'm seeing that that is true. So I do want to keep it as percentage, I think. And then I think I want that percent to be much higher than I originally anticipated. So I think I want this to be a 200% increase, essentially. Which will work out to times 3, basically. And then no matter what the power of the ability is, it will be 3 times as much damage. So we can hit the enemy here. Hit them 3 times. And this should still do the same 15 or 16. 18. Close enough. That should be within our range of variance. So then we now have Bash set up so it can do different amounts of damage. I think that this is probably something I also want to move out of here and have be a like design data value, similar to how we made stagger power and power. I think we need like, the problem is now stagger power is basically the same term as what I'm using here. Oh wait, is that the exact same pattern? Oh, it is, isn't it? Yeah, I need this to have a different name because it's going to clash with another property with the same name. Because we already have stagger power. Oh, what is that doing? Yeah, they need a different name. I think there might be a bug here, but I'm not sure. But if we change the names to be unique, if there is an issue, it should go away. So what is stagger power? This value we're trying to come up with is the increase in damage. We're going to get wordy. Staggered power multiplier. Okay. We're going to change this to be that word as well. And then we're going to go into here and change this to, it's not here. It's going to be in hit effect. Because I made this so this value could be anything, which is maybe a bit silly. But now it should be checking something that's unique. And ideally, we should be able to bring this value in from our design data eventually as well. So we're going to stagger the enemy. It still looks right. Yeah, I guess we never tried actually hitting them with bash when we had that, like, default value in there. I think we would have been, like, insta-staggering them as well. Okay, so we have another slider we can play with. We have the concept of how much damage you're doing, how much stagger you're doing, and how much damage your ability does when the enemy is staggered. So those are 3 different sliders we can play with for each ability to kind of create some variation between them. So I think I want Slash to be a quick ability that pushes up the stagger meter faster than Bash. If I bash the enemy, it should still do more damage than Slash, but should be less effective than just hitting the enemy, I think. Okay, how do I do that? So we want the power of Bash to just be naturally higher. So we can give it a power of something like 20 or maybe even 25. This also potentially gets into some rounding issues, but we'll see what happens. So if we give it a base of 25, that means it will be effectively three times stronger. Not quite. Variance wise, it can spike up to being 3 times stronger, but it's going to be somewhere in the range of, I guess, 2.5 or something. Is that how that works? 10 versus 25. It'll be 2.5 times. Yeah. Okay. So if I hit the enemy 3 times to stagger it, I will have done 15 damage to it. And then if I bash the enemy, I do 42 now. Okay. So now the multiplier is maybe a little high. Bash probably doesn't need to be as strong now. We could probably do something like even 100 times stronger, so it's double damage. And then we can play with seeing what the value differences are. So if we hit it 1, 2, 3, bash, 4 attacks to kill it. If we just use bash, 1, 2, 3 attacks. And it was 5 CT per attack. So that's 15 CT versus 17. So it's still more effective to just hit the enemy and not stagger them. Okay. So which slider do we play with? I think we could crank down the base power. So the power of this is 20 instead of 25. We could also reduce the power of slash slightly. So instead of 10, it could be something like 8. So that's still 4 hits to defeat the enemy there. And then here, still 3 hits to defeat the enemy. So we haven't moved the sliders enough. This doesn't really matter. The amount of multiplier we're doing isn't going to change the formula. I think the only option is to bring down Bash's power, so it is less effective. So we could bring it down to something like 15. And it gets doubled up to 30 when the enemy is staggered. So we could go hit, hit, hit. Do we still defeat the enemy? We still defeat it, so that's still 4. Or we can just bash. And now it takes 4 bashes. Slash is 4 CT. So again, that's 12 for the 3 slashes. And then 5 for the bash. So that's 17 CT total to kill the enemy. Or I could bash 4 times for 20 CT. So this results in it being slightly more efficient to engage with the stagger mechanic. But this is only considering the time it takes to defeat the enemy. It's not considering the amount of health that we will take. So if we engage this enemy, we kind of need to do something where we hit it to start combat. I want to fight it with it already being active. There's not really a good way to do that, is there? I guess we could just start from the second attack or second round to compare. Okay, so we're at 47 health to start here. We spawn the enemy. It's already ready to fight us. So now it's even, because otherwise the first round we get 1 less attack hit against us potentially. So comparing here we have 47 health, and if I do 3 slashes to stagger it, oh, didn't end up defeating it. But because it was staggered, technically we didn't take an extra attack from it. So, okay, that's still a good valid test. So we went from 47 to 31. How many attacks did it end up getting in? So 1, that's 2. And then we staggered it on 3. Yeah, and depending on random variance, we might need to hit it 1 extra time. And then there we went from 31 to 13. So a little higher damage on the second roll. So then the question becomes, how much damage do we take on the if we just use bash? So let's defeat this enemy as quickly as we can. We're going to just do the stagger version. This time it hit a little harder, so we're at 46 instead of 47. And then if we bash, I think it wasn't doing, it was missing on some of those attacks. Okay, let's count the number of times it attacks rather than the amount of damage done. It's 1, 2, 3, and we attack first, so it's still 3. Oh shoot, I didn't mean to. Okay, we're gonna restart. Autopiloted, spawned I spawned a slime when we already had one. So one, 2 hits. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so if we stagger the enemy, we're only getting hit twice. If we just perform bashes, it takes a little longer and we get hit 3 times. So it's a little more efficient to stagger the enemy in terms of how quickly we defeat them, so aka how much time we spend. And it's also more health efficient to stagger the enemy because we won't get attacked as much. We interrupt them out of one of their attacks. This feels like a very small efficiency, though. I don't know if it's going to be big enough to move the needle in the player actually wanting to perform different actions. I also don't know if like slash being 4 CT and bash being 5 CT is also efficient. I suppose one thing we could try is we could try having slash be 3 CT. So that it's just way faster. It doesn't do very much damage, but it's just like you can almost get 2 attacks off in the time it takes you to do 1 a bash. Which means that you get to basically defeat the enemy after only 1 attack versus you, I think. With the current times of their attacks, yeah. That feels way better. Like like just changing slash from 4CT to 3CT significantly improves the way that this is feeling. How does defend fit into this? Defend. What is it currently doing? Because it staggers the enemy as well right now. How does it do that? It looks like we inflict a parry status effect on ourselves. What is the parry status effect doing? Parry status effect. We looked at this a little bit last stream. It's tweaking the damage. Ooh, I guess this is how we could have potentially done the damage modification. We could have done it this way instead of it being an ability effect. But I guess the thing with doing it this way is it's a consistent value. It's based off the status effects damage reduction, whereas the way we did it in here means that each ability can affect it differently. I'm going to have some think on that, because I'm going to think about this because maybe this is a better way to do it. But yeah, so this is basically reducing the amount of damage we take by 50%. But somewhere we are checking to see here, parry check ability effect. This is going to be inside of the enemy, I think. The AI attack. It might actually be AI hit effect at the lowest level. Yeah, it's doing a parry check. And conditionally, parry needs to be not... Yeah, parry needs to be 0. If parry was set to 1, aka true, that means we've parried the enemy. So if parry is false, we apply the damage to the player. Otherwise, if parry is 1, we're going to apply the stun status effect. And then a custom hit notification to say parry on the target of the attack. So the player gets parried, or gets a piece of text that floats above their head that says parry. So I think the tweak we want to make here is, instead of... We're going to just disable this, leave it in the background. Instead of inflicting a status effect, I think we want to apply Stagger. Ooh, this is going to be tricky for my system to handle, actually. Okay, this constant refreshing of Unity is getting on my nerves. So we're going to quickly close Unity down and reopen it. And we're going to do that with Visual Studio as well. Stand by. Please stand by. Okay. I guess while we're waiting for Unity to reload, we've done this deal increased damage to staggered enemies in a somewhat roundabout way, but I think I like the flexibility by having it built into the actual ability itself. Now, we're trying to make it so... Okay, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to change defend. So instead of applying a stun status effect to the enemy when you parry, I think what I'd like to do is instead add a amount of stagger to the enemy when you parry them. So instead of doing this inflict, Unity's Still being a bit slow. Okay, we're going to remove this component. And so instead of doing that, we're going to do apply stagger. This is going to need an amount. Okay, sorry. If we do this, we're going to need a stagger amount. I'm going to create a new default value in here, I think. Do we do that anywhere else? No, but we can go steal it from Bash, which we were just doing this. So we'll steal this, go back to AI hit effect. We'll add a stagger power. Wow, that's annoying. And how much power do we want to add when you parry an enemy? We're currently adding 40 when you slash, and 20 when you use the bash ability. 20 feels right because you could then slash defend potentially. And then that would push it over into the final bit that it needs to get to 100. We can still say parry hit, that's fine. And then this needs the property component, and this needs the conditional component. Okay. So if we go, then we should be able to do defend, and if we time it perfectly with the enemy's attack, we parry, and it didn't apply. It did not work. Stagger power is 20. Apply stagger. Ah, because it's right now always doing the defender, so it's applying stagger to the player when that happens right now. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick search in the project, because there is a spot where we do a bit of setup. One of these has it, for sure. This setup. This is what I'm looking for, is this enum. So we're going to close out a bunch of these. We're going to add a variable for who the target is. And then if it is Is there a better reference for this? Yeah, that's closer. Much closer to what I'm looking for. we can get rid of all of this and just say unit target. Instead of defender, it's just unit target, and it can be attacker or the target that gets this effect. And so we're going to grab its stats and then apply the stagger to it. Okay, that seems pretty straightforward. This does have a third target type, which is custom. Which I use on occasion, but it's definitely not consistent. Yeah, it depends on the situation. All right, I'm going to ignore that for now because it looks like I ignore it in some other spots. So if you set the stagger power to be affect target custom, it's basically just not going to do anything right now. Okay, so now if we change this to attacker, this will apply it to itself. And then we're going to need to do a update on the player hit effect, because now its apply stagger here is going to need to be set to target. Cool. So our slash should still apply stagger to the enemy. And then if we parry an attack, then the enemy should receive stagger, even though the enemy is the one performing the attack ability. So here if we defend, yeah, we parried, they got staggered. The problem we're going to run into now is slash being too powerful with defend. At these, like 3 CT as a charge time for slash felt way better and way more consistent. But I fear that you're going to get into a situation where you now have complete dominance and the AI never gets a chance to do anything. Like, I got hit there, but I think that's just because I wasn't paying attention, because pretty much any situation that comes up, we should be able to just slash defend. So I think that means we have a couple options. Either we increase the slash up again, or maybe it's time to try bringing some of these things down. I had pushed a lot of the values up at one point, and that was feeling better, but in this system, bringing the CT values of the enemies back down might be better. Let's take a look here. So if we go to smash, let's do AI attack. Let's change this to 4. And same thing with the bow attack. Change that to 4. Because I fear that with a defend with 2 CT and a slash of 3, you're going to have a lot of control, because you can kind of defend on 2. If it's 4, you can defend twice to break him. If it's on 5, you can slash and defend. If it's on 6, you can well, you'd have to defend multiple times. So I guess slash being 3 and defend being 2 means that you have full control over most odd numbers, and the enemy can never stop you from blocking and parrying their attacks. But even numbers become a problem. Yeah, like here on 4, I can still stagger, but I can't get the defend in. I'd have to double defend in order to stagger. And again, in this situation, that's not even like giving me a turn. That's just doing 20. So this is another bug we need to look into, though, is the enemy is being staggered on the turn that it's attacking, but it's still performing the attack. Knocked out status effect. This is going to be a lot of references, but somewhere inside of the ability sequence step, we're making sure that the enemy is not knocked out before we activate their abilities. Same thing with the AI ability sequence, which are slightly different, but I think we might also want to be doing something similar for if they're staggered, we want to not perform the attack. This is not or, this is and. And then same thing here. Staggered status effect. Okay, cool. I think this'll fix it so now the AI will not perform their attack if they get staggered on the turn they're trying to activate it. See if I can reproduce that bug. Also, I don't love all the get component check stuff. I think I want to maybe take a look at refactoring some of that a little bit. So if we just keep attacking through... No, that didn't work. How did I get that configuration? Did I need to skip? Just going to skip some turns until we're exactly the same. Okay, so now if I hit the enemy, it should try and perform its attack on the same turn, and now it just fails. And we're still in a good state. Yeah, okay, the game did not break or do anything weird when we did that either. Yeah, we might need to put another limiter on defend, maybe. Like, maybe defend is too strong to be usable at any time. Like, maybe it needs to cost, like, a currency of some kind. Trixie and I have been trying to figure out what to do with these, like, 5 gems, or I guess 6 gems that she built into the UI here. And I think I might want to make it so that those, like, build up as you stagger enemies or as you move around the map, they slowly fill. I think that these need to be their own mechanic for, like, being filled in based off of something you're doing, and maybe defend requires one of these, and so you can bank them, but at some point you're going to run out. I think that's the type of limiter I want to put on defend, opposed to trying to make sure that, like, every set of values is accounted for. I think that, like, making sure that every CT an enemy can have doesn't perfectly line up in a way that allows you to like constantly block is going to be just harder than just like making it so that the enemy just, or making it so the player just can't spam the ability. I'm going to stun the enemy, and then I'm going to check to see after the enemy is no longer stunned. Yeah, our damage goes back to normal. Cool. I just wanted to make sure we are actually cleaning up the status effect properly. This is kind of working. Like, it's not perfect, but it's doing what I want. Bash definitely feels way stronger now. Like, it does do more damage with base. Like, here I'm doing 5. Here I'm doing 8, but it's also 5 CT versus 3 CT, so it's actually not even that much stronger for the amount of time investment in it. But as soon as the enemy becomes weakened, doing 17 feels very good. Big number make brain go burr. I guess the question becomes now what? Like, defend is now built in a little bit. Defend will add a bit of stagger. It doesn't immediately stun the enemy anymore. But if we perfectly parry... Oh, that's funny. If you get the enemy on an odd rotation, you actually can't get in line to be able to parry. And then you'd need to parry twice to line it up again. There's some weird stuff with some of the numbers. I think it's kind of working. Like, if defend is 2 and slash is 3 and the enemy has even attacks, I think the parity is working now. I suppose I could test by adding smash back into the mix and giving that like a CT of like something like 6. And then we can add smash into rotation here. And none of this is considering the movement tech that we were playing with, but I think that that can potentially come into play as well. So the enemy is going to stagger, or sorry, the enemy is going to do a heavy hit. We could do bash, which would bring us to 1 CT, or we could do slash twice. I guess in this situation, slash twice is better because we had already gotten 1 hit in. But if the enemy... Yeah, I guess it kind of depends on what the enemy chooses. Okay, cool. So how do I explain that? So what I'm realizing is depending on what the enemy has in its arsenal for attacks, having them have a variety also allows you to potentially mix up the player's options. So like if the... Right, I had it so that both the ranged attack and the slash attack were both 4, but by adding a 6 into the mix, it can kind of throw off the numbers as well. So maybe varying the enemy's attack patterns is another way that I can make it so that the player can't get into a loop of keeping them stun locked. Now, what if we add a little bit of movement back in? What if we make it so the enemy, instead of doing bow attack directly, can do bow attack pattern, and bow attack pattern is a run, which let's say is a CT of 3, so you have a chance to hit them potentially if there's no rollover. Or maybe we even do like a CT of 4 And then the bow attack itself is like a CT of 1, so they do it immediately after they move. But it only ever happens in this sequence, so you would only ever have it be a 5 CT action all in. Okay, going for... They are not going for the run. There's the run. So at this point, I can't do any attack that would stop them. There's actually some really interesting behavior stuff going on now. I'm trying to get my head wrapped around it, though. So it's going to move, so I can't bash. I mean, technically, I know that it's going to move here, so I can predict that. Then here we can stun it, and then take it out. I'm feeling like I'm making decisions. So here is one where we don't have a good option. So we can slash twice, but that's not going to get us up to the stagger amount we need. So I guess we could move. Would have been better to defend there. I feel like there's a lot more decisions being made here. Like figuring out how to... Like adding this extra ranged attack is kind of neat. This one is the one I can't stop. Like if it goes red, I either have to parry for 3 turns in a row, or I just need to accept the like 21 damage that it does. Yeah, because if I parry 3 times, that'll block all the damage, but I'm wasting time not doing any damage to the enemy. Same thing here. Technically, because they're all even attacks, that does mean I can consistently parry. Now, at this point, the enemy's got enough stagger built up that I can hit it twice. Interesting. So if I want to sacrifice time... And assuming I don't add any limiter to defend, then I can always just defend the attacks until the stagger meter is high enough. I needed to defend again there in order to not get hit. But I feel like there's something kind of interesting to that. Like, if I want, I can spend a lot of time on a fight but it wastes a ton of my time. But I can spend a lot of time in a fight making sure that I never take any damage. I think I want to add a little bit of multiplier to slash as well. It feels somewhat bad that it doesn't do increased damage when the enemy is staggered. I don't want it to be as powerful as bash, but it should do some amount. Where are we, bash? Slash ability. Oh wait, let's steal from here. What was the actual effect? Stagger power multiplier. So grab that, bring that over to slash, put that in here, and then we'll make it so it's not 100% multiplier, but maybe just a 50% multiplier, or maybe even just 40. That should still be noticeable that it does more, but not by a lot. Oh, I guess when we talk about noticeable, the other thing we could do is steal the combo system's notifications. How does the combo system change the hit notification? Because there's definitely a here combo count. This combo count is changing. It's changing the notification text to be a different color. So if I do this, I can do something as simple as if this does not equal null, then I can create a combo count local variable, which can be 0, and I can use this instead of the combo system, like that. And then combo count can be 1, 2, or 3, depending on how big of an impact I want. And then I can kind of piggyback off of that old prototype system to kind of make it so the text is more impactful when the enemy is staggered. So then if we stagger the enemy, hit. Oh, it didn't work. It looks like I saved. I'll do a quick debug. Let's change up the background. Chaos time. All right. Stagger. Cool. We're definitely hitting that chunk of the code. Good. Okay, the enemy is staggered. Finding the status effect. Combo count is being set to 1. It is creating a setup with combo count. Let's find references and see where this is being used on the other side. Oh, we only increase the crit if it's 2, 3, or 4. I guess I should have checked that. So 1 isn't good enough. So we can do either level 2, level 3, or level 4. Let's start with level 2. I kind of want to see each level though. because this is actually originally getting a property value, I could have a different ability effect setting this too. Interesting. Okay. Let's get rid of that breakpoint for now, because we should hopefully be seeing the effects. So now if we do bash, yeah, now we do the yellow text. And then if we change this to combo count 3, I believe it'll be an orange and 4 will be red, I think. Also, it sounds like there's a sound effect change in here. I'm curious to see what that sounds like. So let's turn on the game audio. Interesting. It was playing a lot of different sound effects. I think we may have broken something, so I'm going to worry about that later. We'll turn that back off. But that was doing an orange text. I didn't really notice much else different about it otherwise, though. Yeah, the movement doesn't seem that crazy. This is playing different sound effects. This is changing the color. I am doing some stuff with the translation based off of the combo count. Looks like the Y value and the time. This is the time part. So we increase the time that it stays on screen and the amount it jumps up based off of the combo count as well. As well as changing its color and a different sound effect. But again, the sound effect stuff sounded broken to me, so I'm just not going to worry about that right now. Let's see level 4. I think I might be fine just with the level 2, just yellow. And a very, very minor change in the movement. Yeah, I think I'm fine just with the yellow version of the text. It's enough to let you know that something's changed, but not enough to be like... Yeah, the timing just feels a little bit off. I think it feels better in progression when the combo system existed, because you'd be doing 1, 2, 3, and you'd see it like the text changing. But I think for our purposes, just the first level is going to be fine. Trixie with the hydration redeem. Appreciate it. Okay. Cool. So we're going to hit, and then stagger. And then yellow text for the hit for while it's staggered. Okay, and then here we'll defend this attack, but it's not a parry, so it won't affect the stagger meter. And then the enemy's going to move, but we can stagger it before it does. And then yellow. Okay, so it is 3 hits and then a attack while it's staggered. Or we could just do... It's actually significantly harder to hit it with just bash. With some of these changes we've made. The enemy hits harder, has weirder attacks. Yeah, we can definitely do way more sequence stuff with like when the enemy actually becomes staggered. Like we could potentially have a different idle animation. I know that's more work for you, Drixie, but like we could do some stuff to make it more impactful. But I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible for this evening in order to see whether or not it's working before going too crazy with it. We can definitely polish it up, but for the time being, just trying to see if it works. I think it works great though. I think this is really working. How much do I normally do? That's 5, 4, 4. Okay, and then this is 7, 6, 6. Okay, so it is noticeable with the kind of variance on our damage numbers. The 50% increase is still large enough that we can see the difference. I kind of like the movement tech, but it's much simpler now. Like the enemy isn't always moving, but when it tries to move, it like, if I'm not paying attention, it means that it can get the drop on me. Like I think I can always deal with it with the current CT numbers. I can either defend it or I can potentially push the enemy into stagger. The only problem space, I think, is when the enemy decides to do the ranged attack and move as soon as I engage it in combat, because I won't be able to build up a big enough stagger meter quick enough. Yeah, the yellow text is also great. Okay, so here, so in this situation, no, even here I'm fine because it takes 5 CT, so I can do the slash into defend. So there's never a situation in which I can't stop the enemy from moving. Yeah, I like this, like, normal green attack, which is a little small attack similar to our slash, is a quick 4-turn clock, which you can double defend and waste time, but you can parry it if you really want to block it. And then there's this 6 attack, which is much weightier. And then the 5 CT, which is 4 CT on the move and 1 CT on the attack, feels like it's working as well. I like this. Okay. I think we got it. I think that this is enough for us to play test it, potentially. And then we can add more modifiers to this system. Like easy things are potentially putting some nodes in here that will increase the stagger power or increase the stagger multiplier, so it either does more damage when the enemy is staggered or it makes the enemy staggered more quickly. Those are going to be some easy modifiers we can kind of create nodes for in here. We aren't currently prototyping any kind of mechanics with decaying. Like once the stagger meter is filled, like I can run away and the enemy will just continuously hold that stagger amount until I eventually push it all the way up to 100. So there might be something to prototype with, like the idea of like it decaying, but I think that's going to just make the system way more complicated. Maybe that's good, but at least right now I'm not sure if I want to go that route. It's also important to note I'm not going to give you defend right away either. So this enemy will feel more punishing in its current setup. Like if I don't have defend here, there's actually not much I can do. I could try moving, which would allow the enemy to potentially miss in that situation. Yeah, without defend, this is actually much more brutal. So maybe we don't want to have this ability until after the defend is introduced. Yeah, like there's nothing I can do in this situation except attack and hope it doesn't move. Although I guess it wouldn't be able to, but we just take the hit on that one. I think that's creating interest. Like I've keep fighting it over and over again, and I'm not finding like a specific pattern where I'm like, okay, or I think there are patterns. Like there are moments where it's like, okay, in this situation I want to do this, in this situation I want to do this, but like I'm not finding them standing out too egregiously. Like it's not like I'm noticing them and being like, oh, in this situation it's this again. I'm not feeling bored. Maybe I will eventually get bored of it, but right now this feels good, especially when we consider the fact that we would not be fighting them over and over again, but there would be like walking and traversal and exploration in between each of these individual fights. Okay. Cool. I'm going to call this good for today. We're 15 minutes away from when we'd normally end anyways. Sometimes I end early. I'm one of those evenings where I'm not sure much where else to go in the next 15 minutes. It's not even that I'm necessarily tired or running out of steam per se, as much as it is that I think I just want to have Drixie play this and potentially some other folks and see if any playtesters have any additional feedback. I think this is working. With the combination of the stagger plus the CT timing and a little bit of movement, I think this is gonna work. Okay. Or at least it's good enough to do a round of feedback on. And like I said, I can't think of anything else I'd want to tweak right now. Maybe play with some decay stuff and just see how that feels. If like it loses a little bit of stagger every turn, that'll obviously change the values that we would have on like slash and defend and potentially. Because if the enemy loses say 5 stagger points every round and it takes 3 rounds to, perform a slash, that would be too much, I think. I don't know. I'd need to rebalance it around the decaying. But yeah, I don't feel like doing that in the next 15. So we're going to call it here for today. We'll be back next Sunday for more game dev. Maybe starting to put this all together. Maybe that's the next step for, if I don't get to it at some point this week, next stream will most likely be going into the actual levels and starting to put together enemy placements, like figuring out where we want all the different enemy spawns to be, and maybe start figuring out what happens when you have multiple enemies on the screen. This one's meant to be a ramp up, so maybe there's something to multiple enemy combat that we want to explore, because right now I'm only exploring single enemy fighting. Regardless, I think it's time to move out of the combat arena area that we've built for testing and start putting this in the actual game and see how it's feeling. Out of curiosity, this one just dies in 2 hits, right? Pretty much. You can technically stagger it if you have defend, but you won't have defend early on. So really all you can do is attack this thing 3 times and kill it. And so you'll see that meter filling, but you won't actually get to stagger it, which I think is fine, because again, early on you won't even have bash. You'll only have the slash ability. It won't be till you get to these green slimes where it actually starts to feel like the mechanics come into play. Yeah. Okay, I think I'm happy. Yeah, next week we'll do more stuff. Start to put everything together into one package that will be chapter 1 / kind of an initial demo. For now though, this is going to be totally signing out. Later, folks.